None of VPM Partners, Bob Kendall, or any of its officers, directors, employees, other personnel, representatives, agents, or independent contractors is, in such capacities, a licensed financial advisor, a registered investment advisor, or a registered broker-dealer. None of VPM Partners or its personnel gives investment or financial advice or makes investment recommendations, nor are any of them in the business of effecting trades or directing client equity accounts or giving futures trading advice tailored to any particular client situation. Nothing contained in VPM Partners broadcasts, on its websites, or in its written materials constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, promotion, endorsement, or offer by others described above of any particular security, other investment product, transaction, or investment. Copyright 2014 VPM Partners. All rights reserved. Terms of use apply. Reproduction, adaptation, distribution, public display, exhibition for profit, or storage in any electronic storage media in whole or in part is prohibited under penalty of law.
Good morning, everyone. We are live on Process Warriors. It's right on the screen in front of me. You think I know what it is, right? Anyway, so yeah, we're looking forward to this section. We're going to be profiling Portfolio Expert, which is our top-end product that we have, our desktop product. A lot of features to go through. So we're talking about this basically be a full training course, and we get done of how to use this product on all the levels, I guess, as we go through this. So we spent, I guess, when we started this show, we started off with 2.0, and the same concepts that apply through building portfolios and all that. Same thing. That's all the same, no matter what product you're on. Basically, they're the same products. One has just a lot more functionality and things of that sort that you can do. So anyway. Most of this show is going to be run by Mitch, so all I can do is heckle from time to time. So, you know, there's not much I'm going to be able to do. I'm going to let him run the show. He's a much better expert than I am on this product for sure. But anyway, yeah. So, Mitch, I'll let you go ahead in just a second here, and I'll get you up ready to drive, and off you'll go. So you're on.
All right. So I thought it'd be good to just go through this product. It's a pretty robust system. Sometimes when advisors see this initially, they just feel overwhelmed by it because there's so much customization, so much flexibility with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the basics of how this system is laid out. We're going to start with portfolios, and then as we go on, we're going to start touching upon other elements within the platform here. So first off, when you log into Portfolio Expert, it's going to give you this initial perspective. And as we discussed last time, at the top of the screen, we have these different perspectives. So we have the home page, which is sort of like your dashboard within the product. We have some tutorial videos already put together. We also have links to the forums as well as the wiki, which we'll be covering when we start going through things like queries, where there's a lot more moving pieces to it. And then in the event that you have any wish lists or anything that doesn't seem to be appearing correctly, you can actually submit a bug report, and that'll just bring it to our attention. Of course, you could also submit anything to support@vpmpartners.com, and that'll get our attention on it. But this is the initial welcome screens, the initial dashboard within the product. But really what you're going to be doing is you're going to be spending most of your time within this portfolio section. Quite often the advisors that use Portfolio Expert, they have this loaded up on a couple different machines within their office. They'll typically have it within their main research workstation. But then they may also have a conference room where they have a PC loaded up with this software, and they'll have a different view on that. So we're going to show you how to customize the view depending on what type of desktop you're working at, as well as what the context is that you're looking at it. So first off, here's the portfolio perspective. And all a perspective is, it's just a compilation of these different views or these different boxes down here at the bottom. So each of these little areas, these little boxes that have a little tab next to it with a folder icon, these we refer to as views. And each of these views can be clicked on and drug around the screen. So you see here I grabbed the active symbols and I'm just simply rearranging it. Whenever you log onto this, you have the ability to see either the default that the system has, or we can customize it and get it laid out to something that's a little bit more user-friendly. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and start off and try organizing this as I would use it if I were presenting this to an advisor right off the gate, or maybe to a client if I were to present one of the portfolios. So as you see, we have the portfolio list right here at the top left. This is simply all the portfolios that I've built out within the system. Now you'll see that some of these have a folder icon next to it, and some have a VPM icon next to it. If I also had any portfolios shared, I'd see a little flag next to it signifying that it's a shared portfolio. Someone else created it. I simply have read-only access to it. Now, the reason why this is important to know the difference, when you create a bunch of portfolios within VPM 2.0, the system will automatically bring them over to the Portfolio Expert system, but they're going to be read-only. You're only going to be able to see those portfolios within the Portfolio Expert system. You won't be able to make any changes to them. So you see here, I have this portfolio titled First Trust VPM Classic. This has a folder icon. This is actually a folder or a portfolio that I've created within the system that I can make changes to. I could add securities, I can remove securities, deactivate, reactivate positions on it. Whereas one of these other portfolios, like this Global Bond Fund strategy, because it has that VPM icon next to it, I can't actually do anything with it. It's just a portfolio that's been copied over from 2.0. So any changes that I want to make to the strategy will have to be done to the 2.0 system. So right off the bat, there's the list of portfolios that I've either subscribed to that are Premier portfolios, or I've already built out or have been brought over from the 2.0 system. The other views on this screen show me some relevant information in regards to this portfolio. You'll notice as I click on the different portfolios on here that these different views will change, they'll refresh to show me the information that pertains to that specific portfolio. So that's very valuable because if I want to look at a bunch of different views all at once, or if I want to go through a portfolio with an advisor or a client, what I'd want to do is lay this out for the best way possible to tell the story that makes sense. What I recommend is that you have a narrative in place when it comes to using this product. So for example, let's start with something that we use pretty frequently around here, which is this Global Equity Strategy 4. So as you see on this main portfolio list, I have it selected. I now have a few settings, or a few of the views loaded up to help present the strategy, but it's not really laid out in any sort of rhyme or reason. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the very basics. As I tell this strategy to an advisor, I'd say, well, this is our Global Equity Strategy 4 portfolio. First thing I'm going to do is highlight, well, what's in the portfolio? The way to do that is, of course, by looking at the active symbols. So as you already know, the active symbols tell you what's currently available within the portfolio to be traded on. Now, of those active symbols, we may be open in some of these, depending on where we're at within the market. There'll be some positions that we do have active, but won't have open within the portfolio. So again, starting with the portfolio, I highlight, well, this is the investable universe that we've boiled down to this portfolio. So this is the only thing that we're going to trade on within the portfolio. So this is the perfect place to start off. So I usually keep this at the bottom left. From there, what I'll do is I'll start talking about, well, now that we know what the universe contains, let's talk about what we actually have the ability to invest into and what we're currently invested in. And that's, of course, within the open positions. So logically, what I would do is I'd put this right next to the active symbols. And as you see here, I just grabbed the active positions tab, I dragged it over, and now it's right next to the active symbols. By putting it in the same little block and trying to bring that tab over right next to active symbols, it puts it in the same segment of the screen, of the real estate here. So now as I'm going through a portfolio, I can start off with the active symbols. This is the investment universe for this. I could then talk about what we're currently invested in. And of course, if it's a weekend, or if we happen to have any daily securities on it, and it's a day where we have some orders within this portfolio, that's the next piece of it, because we've started with talking about what's available within the portfolio. We then segue to what's actually invested, and then orders, of course, are the action items for today. And so what I'll do is I'll just grab this and drag it right next to it as well. What I also have loaded up on the screen is the expert chart. And this is, of course, the equity curve of the portfolio, and it shows how this portfolio has changed as far as total value over time. Behind that is also the portfolio trade profile, which has some key stats in it. This is typically what you're used to seeing in a little box within the 2.0 system when you click on that summary page. So it gives me some key stats as far as how heavily invested are we, what's the number of positions that we're in on an average day. The average day is long. It's some pretty valuable information, but this may be something that I might not keep at the forefront. Now, as we're looking at this, one of the things that you'll notice that we're missing is, of course, the monthly and annual returns. So at least at this point, I've inadvertently closed off of that view. It's not loaded up within the system. So this is true for all views, all perspectives within the system. If I have something that I want to add to this overall perspective, I'm going to do that by clicking on the window up here at the top. And you'll see there's an option within the window drop-down that says Show View. And by clicking on that, this gives us a list of all the available views within the system, and they're automatically grouped by common perspectives. So in this case, if I go to Portfolios, you'll see the list of views that are loaded up. Some of these are already lightly grayed out, which means I already have it loaded up within the perspective right now. And you'll see there's a few others on here that are in black because I haven't yet loaded these up to the perspective. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and grab the portfolio monthly and annual returns, click OK, and now that'll get loaded up onto this perspective. You'll also notice there was a couple others on here that I didn't have at the time. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to Show View, and I'm going to grab those as well. So I'll grab the portfolio symbol returns, and then we'll also grab the trade log. Now you see when I grab these additional views, it just sort of tossed them anywhere on the screen. I don't necessarily want to keep those views in that spot if I'm going to go through the process of actually presenting this to someone. So what I'd want to do is, just like I did with the other views, is I want to drag it onto the page that makes the most sense. So as we talked about before, we have the active symbols, which leads to open positions, will lead to portfolio orders. Logical next step in this whole process, well, what are all the orders that we've had within the portfolio? And so what I typically do is I'll grab this trade log, I'll put it right next to portfolio orders. So it's in that same section, but it's at the end of the list because it's not something that I'm always going to reference, but I still want it within that same flow of thought. What I'd also do is add these portfolio symbol returns to this section down here, because this shows sort of a breakdown by each of these securities within this portfolio, how much money we've generated from the system, and what the net profit in terms of dollars as well as percentage has been over the life of this portfolio. So this is pretty valuable information to have, but again, it's not necessarily going to be always front and center, so I don't want to have it always on the screen. This portfolio monthly annual returns is some pretty valuable information to have at times, but I don't necessarily want it to be consuming the entire page. So what I'm going to do is just grab this, and we're going to go ahead and move it off to a different side of the screen. Bear with me here, I'm just trying to get it to the right spot. Did I lose control of the computer, Bob? There we go. So I'm just going to drag it. So right now I have it in the same section as the portfolio list. But what I can actually do is, now that it's in the same section, I could have it just take up a portion of this side of the screen. And so it can take a little bit of toying with or playing with to get it laid out just the way you like it into these different quadrants. And then you could dynamically change these views around based upon where you want it to fill on the screen. So if you only want to show, let's say the annual returns over here, you could have that listed up and loaded up on the side. And then we could have the rest of these views organized. So this is typically how I have it organized. I'll also bring this portfolio trade profile and drag it up there. So now when I log into this, if I'm going to go and sit with a client, I could much better present one of these portfolios. So now I could talk about, well, here's the Global Equity Strategy 4. It's made up of these ETFs within the portfolio. I lost control of the computer again, Bob. Bear with me, folks. There we go. So I have the Global Equity Strategy 4 portfolio here. This portfolio is made up of these 5 ETFs, as you see right here. Now, of these 5 ETFs, we're currently invested in all 5 of these. And you see we only have a 1 percentage point reserve in cash right now. The rest is fully invested within this portfolio. We don't have any orders today, so depending on the conversation, I may or may not reference it. And if at any point someone asks, well, at what point we got into these securities, I could pull up the trade log and talk about the activity around any particular one of these securities. And I could also organize it by the ticker itself or the date, depending on what the relevant information is. So that's just a general layout of the whole system. I know this may seem really dry, really boring for some of you that are already using Portfolio Expert, but I think it's good just to start with the very basics of how to organize the screen. And then also keep in mind, as you're laying it out, what points you want to cover and how you want to use the presentation or the layout to give a presentation to clients. Now, one of the other things I could do with this is with these portfolio lists, if each of the views will refresh with the information to the portfolio that was last highlighted. But if I want to compare portfolios like the Global Equity Strategy 3 and Global Equity Strategy 4 here, if I use my control key and click on 2 of these portfolios, you'll notice that the expert chart has changed from just a simple area chart, and it now shows the information as far as the total value of the portfolio over the life of this portfolio, or going to the area of time that I've selected. So this expert chart, and I'm going to go ahead and double click the expert chart just to pull it front and center. And we've already loaded up some time frames here. So I could look at it in terms of a 1-month view, a 3-month view, and so on down the list. So I can compare 2 portfolios, or maybe I also want to toss on an index in here by doing an index comparison. So let's we'll just grab the Dow since that's first up on the list. And you can see how any index versus strategy has performed over varying time periods. In this case, I'm looking at a 5-year. I can go to 10-year if the portfolios have been around 10 years. And if I do all, that'll go to the longest length of time that we have for a particular portfolio or stock or benchmark, as in this case. And so you can see, depending on what time frame, this automatically updates. And now we're not talking in terms of the dollar amounts of the portfolios. We're talking about the total return of the portfolio. And so you see we start off with a 0% at the beginning of this range here. And in the case of the Dow, we're up somewhere around 60-65% over 10 years, whereas these other portfolios were up 120% versus 135%. So what you could use this expert chart to do is quickly compare portfolios to benchmarks, and you could also quickly adjust the time spans. You could either use some of our presets, or what you could also do is you can manually control this using some of the settings that we have for the expert chart. So at the top right of the expert chart, we have a few additional settings here. You can control things like the line width or the name of the chart. But what you could also do is you can control the time interval of this. And so you see here we have all the same options that we had loaded up at the top of the screen, but we also have a custom function. So if we wanted to, we could manually put in a date range. So this could be used for the length of time that maybe the earliest portfolio has been around, or maybe since a client came on board. If you just want to look at varying windows of time, you can very easily just type this out. So we could do the beginning of December of, we'll just pick a random date. We'll say 2007. and then we'll go to present here. And you do have to type in all 4 digits for the year. You click apply, and that will refresh. And now we're looking at the custom time frame that we've entered in this case. And so I'll go ahead and double click the expert chart, and that's gone back to the same quadrant it was at before. And so now I'm talking about these 2 different portfolios in terms of a certain span of time. I could highlight the annual returns over here for a particular portfolio that I click on. And then I could also go through each of the different sections on this. So again, none of this is really groundbreaking in terms of functionality that hasn't existed within the system, aside from this expert chart, which we're going to be using a little bit more as we go through this, where you actually can do some of the comparisons that you've wanted. But the rest of the information that you're used to seeing within the 2.0 system is all laid out within this portfolio perspective. Now that I've gotten this laid out the way that I like it, I could actually go up to the top left of the screen here and go to File, and then I could save the current layout and preferences. And what I'll do is give this the title Presentation. See if my typing's any good. And so next time I log into this, I'll have the option of selecting the presentation view right from the get-go, so I don't have to rearrange this every single time. So now that I have this all loaded up, I could use this as a presentation tool. Now, let's say you're meeting with clients. This is maybe your usual research view, or maybe this has elements of your presentation view for your main conference room. Depending on what type of elements you want to highlight or to show off, or the flow of things, you can fully rearrange this. And maybe what I want to do is always see what's open and active at the same time. So what I may do is put those side by side again. Let me pull this out. I think I keep going off the screen or something, Bob.
Yeah, I think you do. You did.
Thanks.
You're on the Mac.
All right. So maybe on my research machine, I want to have these views open all the time. What I can do is I could lay this out the way that's most valuable on a research side of thing. And then I could also save this view as research. So that way, there may be some elements that I want to see first and foremost when I'm creating a portfolio, or I'm going through some reviews on it that I don't necessarily need to see all the time when I'm presenting this to a client.
Well, Mitch,
let's say this is the view that I want to use for research. I could just go to File.
I'm trying to interrupt you here. Sorry, I had my microphone off. But one of the things I would talk about how you're grabbing these corners and moving this around, how that works, because you're doing it as you do it all the time, and I have no clue why you're doing that.
Okay.
How it actually works.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So the way that the system is organized, there's invisible sections across this. So you see here on open positions, when I click this tab, this sets the focus to it. You'll notice that the open positions is this green color as opposed to the white colors. But when I click on the tab itself and hold it down with my mouse, the moment that I move towards the side or outside of the bounds of this square right here, it gives me this folder cursor. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to drag the open positions around the page. So depending on where it is that I drop the cursor or let go of the cursor will determine where it ends up on the page. So for example, if I go right next to active symbols here and put it to the left or the right of active symbols, I could actually put it in that same box.
Yeah, I was going to say it's sort of like setting up one of your Google pages. You can drag it and it resizes everything. So it's kind of I wouldn't call it quirky, but when you're moving these screens around, especially when you're doing the bigger elements, it kind of slides around and rearranges stuff. So you need to save these pages, because if you accidentally click on that little X, it's gone forever.
Well, as far as this little X right here on open positions.
Yeah.
Well, what you'd have to do is you'd have to go back up to the window here and reload it.
That's if you saved it. That's my point. If you haven't saved it, you could lose that.
Right. Yeah, you'd have to manually go back through.
So you want to make sure when you're setting up these pages, just having worked on it a bit, is you want to make sure, old buddy of mine used to call save-o, like the guys on the big oars, rolling the oars, save-o. Yeah, just save your work as you're going through this if you're setting up some custom screens. If you're just playing, that's one thing. But if you want to see this again ever, you need to make sure that happens. Actually, if we logged out right now, it would remember where we are.
Right.
But that's one way. But if you forget to do that, it can be frustrating. I've set up some pages and it's just like, really, it's not there anymore. I just lost that thing or whatever. So you want to make sure that goes on as well.
Yeah. So I mean, this is incredibly customizable to the point that you know, some advisors, when they see it, they see all this information loaded up and they're just like, wow, there's just too much here. I can't handle everything. Well, that's fine. You know, let's rearrange it then to make the most sense that works for you. You know, for some it may be that you bring everything just right on top of each other, so that way you know, it's really flat file looking where you have all the sections just right on top of each other.
Why don't you show them since I'm thinking about it right now. So you hate the black screen, no problem. Show them how to change the whole theme over to white. You just go light theme and bingo. It's all going to light up in a white background there. And I know some folks have complained about the black, so we put the white.
Right.
In theory, I guess you could customize even all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you can. That may be for a later show.
Yeah,
I spent too much time the first time customizing every single little piece of it just to get it right.
But you can change the colors, you can change the fonts, you can change everything. So it's that flexible. It's just you got to that definitely if you're doing that, make sure you save the screens while you're doing that. That's for sure.
Yep. Yeah, and for a lot of people, and I'm glad you mentioned the themes, Bob, because some advisors, when they saw this, were like, "Well, I don't like black," and some have literally they were about ready to write this system off just because it was black as opposed to white. But we do have the lighter theme to it, so if that's what you prefer, you certainly have that option. The other thing worth mentioning is this expert chart. If you right-click on it, you can either copy it, save it, or go right to print. So let's say I copy this. Bob, can you go ahead and just open up Word real quick?
Possibly.
All right.
See, I don't use this computer other
there
than...
it is, right there at the top.
Oh, there it is.
Made it really easy.
Yeah.
So as you saw, I copied this. If I just paste that image, it's going to look exactly the way I copied it. So in this case, it's this nice white background. So this is perfect for those of you that are toner conscious when it comes to printing materials off. If you like that darker look to it, and maybe you want to use it more for the you know, a PowerPoint presentation or more of a web-based where you're not concerned about how much toner could get potentially used, you could flip back over to the dark theme, do the exact same thing that we did before, where we're right-clicking, going to copy. And now when we go back to this Word document.
A second. I just want to get rid of all these files on the side here.
Sure.
You didn't know I was going to show the world everything I've been working on.
And what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and paste that on here as well. And so as you can see, I have the light theme on one page, and then on the other page, I have this dark theme. So again, you know, everything that's just like 2.0, everything that you see within the system, you can very easily get out of the system for use of presentation materials and so on. So that's the quick and the dirty when it comes to the overall layouts of Portfolio Expert. But now that I've just really rearranged this and I absolutely hate it, I am going to go ahead and close this down, and we're going to try loading it back up with one of the saved views. So what we'll do is we'll jump to the desktop here and make sure I grab it here. So as you see, I have an icon on my desktop. I checked off Show Saved Settings here. So that way, when I log in, I will actually be prompted for one of those saved views. And so you saw I had a presentation and research, and last show we did a quick sample one, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with this presentation one because that's the one that I want to use for this particular computer. So when I click OK, it'll get loaded up and it'll be nicely organized the way that I want to use it for this particular purpose.
Yeah,
and again,
Mitch, I want to just say that you also, if you have multiple monitors, you can do multiple instances of each page.
That's
so
right.
I have one computer with 3 monitors. I have another one with 6 monitors. And if I wanted to, I could put something on each page that maybe was relevant to whatever, or multiple. But the 3-headed one, I've got a big screen and 2 small on the side. And I've got 30-inch with 2 portraits on the side. And that's a really cool view when you bring up that whole view of that when you look at it. It's pretty impressive looking.
It is, and it's funny you mention that. It makes me think back to a time when I was working in an office where we happened to have an empty cubicle that was right in what we called the gauntlet. It was the area that all the clients had to walk through that section of the office before getting to one of the nicer conference rooms. So we didn't want to have just an empty desk sitting there, powered down and everything. And so one of I think it was the vice president of the company, he actually came in, had me set up Portfolio Expert with all these different views loaded up, had a notepad on the desk as well as a pen next to it with some scribbles on the pad of paper. So that way when clients walked by, we never know all the different thoughts that a client has when they walk into our office. They see stacks of paper on a desk, and some could view that as incredible disorganization. And the thought is, do I really want my application to go into that office? But what the attitude was, or the thought was when we did this, was that when a client walked by, instead of seeing an empty cubicle with the monitors turned off and an empty chair there, what the vice president wanted to do is he wanted to have a computer loaded up as if someone had just gotten done with some research and just stepped away for a few minutes to get some coffee or get a drink of water. So it created that impressive feel, because a lot of clients, they see this, and I've heard of some advisors closing some multi-million-dollar cases just being able to show this system off to their clients because of that the impression that it creates to the individual client, because it's pretty robust, and it certainly shows that off when you use it in the presentation process.
Hey Mitch, one of the things that also we haven't showed here, since you're doing all the presentation stuff, is we should have a logo that you could throw up in the Portfolio Expert, show how you can customize that. But I'm trying to think if I've got any place where I know where there's something we could stick up there. So maybe we'll save that for another time, since instead of searching through my computer.
Yeah.
I don't use this computer enough that I know where everything is. I think I know where it is, but I could be thinking about, I have 5 computers on my desk, so which one am I using? So that's really the issue, I guess, from that standpoint.
Yeah, we'll highlight that, I think, next time when we go through this. But so this is we've just covered a lot of different things about the portfolios. What we actually haven't talked about is how to create a portfolio. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to create a portfolio really quick within Portfolio Expert. And if you're used to using 2.0, this is going to seem very straightforward, because it's following the same type of steps that you're used to. So at the portfolio list here, you'll see at the top right we have some options here. One of these is hide my VPM 2.0 portfolios. So let's say you've brought in, when you logged in Portfolio Expert, I mentioned first and foremost that it copied over all those portfolios from the 2.0 system. Well, if I click off this button, what it will do is it will shrink the list, and it will remove off any portfolios that were automatically brought over from 2.0. So it removes those that are held over in the 2.0 system. It won't remove those that I have subscribed to that are the premier portfolios. But as I click on this, you can see how the list shrinks as the Global Equity for Schwab portfolio comes and goes. The reason for that is because I had this portfolio built in 2.0 and now I want to hide it. But let's say I have one of these premier portfolios or one of these 2.0 portfolios. If I right click on one of these portfolios, I actually have the option to clone the portfolio, and it'll just give me the default, so it'll be the same as the original name, and then we just tack on this double dash and then the word clone behind it. So that way you know which is the original versus the clone.
And obviously you can rename that if you want.
Yes, of course. So you see here, there's the original bond fund strategy. It's as the Premier portfolio. Now that I've cloned it, it has that portfolio icon next to it. And now you'll see when I right click on this one, I actually have some options in here, including editing the portfolio. So now I could go into the strategy. I've made a copy from maybe one of the Premier portfolios, or maybe I just wanted to bring over the 2.0 portfolios. Easiest way to bring that full-fledged over to Portfolio Expert is just to right-click, clone, and then move forward with it, and you can just hide the old 2.0 portfolios in there. But let's say, I want to start fresh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this portfolio right here, and I'm going to do that by clicking this Delete Portfolio button. And as always, be careful what you wish for, because we will actually blast it out of here. So in this case, I'm getting rid of the clone. And now it's gone. So let's actually talk about creating a fresh portfolio. So right next to that VPM icon and to the left of the delete portfolio icon is the new portfolio icon. When you click on that, it's going to give you two options. Now, most of you that are used to using 2.0, you may not even know that the VDOS portfolios are in there. It's an entirely new way of creating the portfolios. It's still using or has the ability to use the same VPM logic to issue the buys or sells. The main distinction between VPM Classic and VDOS is VPM Classic will use our allocation factor that the system will generate at the time you create a portfolio. VDOS gives you the flexibility to be able to set minimum as well as maximum values when it comes to the holdings. So if you have SPY in your portfolio and you always want to keep a 5% stake in it, and maybe you want to go as large as 15%, you can set that in a VDOS portfolio, whereas in the VPM Classic way of that we manage portfolios, we give you that allocation factor at the end of the portfolio construction, and it's a set it, forget it, love it, or hate it type framework.
Yeah, and Mitch, I think we'll probably do a whole show on building VDOS portfolios. Yeah. That's for those that want to do that, and that ability is also off of the desktop. It's a little, it's kind of wonky, I guess is a good word for it, but it's a little more the VDOS on the in the dashboard side, where basically like on Connect, it can do all these things, but it's a little harder to authenticate some of these concepts and ideas. It takes a few more clicks, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, the VDOS system has a lot of power, and as you said, we are going to save that for a different show. But it's one of those things where you have a tremendous amount of customization and flexibility, but along with that goes potentially quite a bit more work if you want to be that more interactive with the system, so to speak. So, yeah, as you said, that is...
And the concept behind when we decided to offer this, which has been almost 2 years ago, I guess now, that was giving you the ability to control. We heard from a lot of advisors they weren't actually using our allocation amounts, which was a big mistake, because we can't find any strategy that beats VPM Classic, but people want to do things different. It's your business. So we wanted to be able to, one of the concepts that I had when I started this company was there's my way, and then we wanted to be able to authenticate any process, anything you wanted to do to make your business run. So otherwise being able to automate the business was part of the goal, and the VDOS moved us to that level. And but for the most part, VPM Classic is the best way to go. It's just a different way to think. It's a demand on capital model versus an allocation strategy, and even doing the min-maxes, as Mitch has mentioned here. There's dynamics that you can create, but it also becomes much more controllable, and that's what, let's face it, we're all probably at some level a control freak. So you want to have control, you can take back control, even though the robot might do a better job. You still want to be able to, that's going to be the challenge, I think, when we have cars that drive themselves. I'm still going to want to drive my car. I like driving, I like the feel of the wheel. To sit there and not have to pay attention seems kind of weird. I don't know how that transition is going to happen, but it's the same kind of thing here. Using VPM Classic, you've got you've got the Google car, I guess, versus hands-on, getting the road feel and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I have I have thought that the Google car would certainly change the dynamics of long road trips. Just being able to punch in an address and all that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Just go to sleep, I guess, right? And sleep. The driver could sleep. Yeah. Anyway, so.
What's funny though with this is, when we launched VDOS, I think it was a little over 2 years ago. When we got it up and running, it was amazing how many advisors always wanted to have a 10% stake of gold in their portfolio.
Right.
And of course, that certainly has gone away. But that's one of the benefits and the downsides is we actually have the ability that you can put your own opinions, your own viewpoint into the process. Whether that helps or hurts you is really up to you guys.
Yeah, and the thing about that's okay to be able to do, and then you can also, as I don't think we've showed you showed the clone, but building a buy and hold strategy against it as well. Right. So you can do some comparisons to see what those elements really mean to you, which is once again is what we wanted to be able to do. And it's pretty simple to do a lot of things on this platform that we always wanted to do in VPM 2.0, but we never could. And the technology in 2.0, while it's solid, is more of a hard-coded strategy. It doesn't have the flexibilities, and that's what we built on this process here.
Yep. So all that said, let's actually go in and build a VPM Classic portfolio. So I'm going to go ahead and click that VPM Classic button, and it'll bring up the portfolio wizard. And like I said before, this is going to seem very familiar to those of you that are used to using 2.0. So I'll start by clicking the next button. It'll give me the opportunity to put a portfolio name here. And you see it's already pre-filled some defaults in on the right-hand side. So these are the other steps that we're going to go in and either adjust or validate as we go through the process. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and give this a name, and we're going to call this global sample. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to replicate some of the same things that we've done within the Global Equity Strategy 4 portfolio. So now that I've given it a name, I'll go ahead and put next in.
Hey, Mitch, could you go back for 1 second?
Yeah.
There's something here that I just want to bring up. I stole your mouse, so you can't even do anything. So
yeah.
No. Anyway, what I want to talk about, there's a number here, unique identifier, and that unique identifier gives you the ability to share with other expert users, but also in the case if you're using Asset Book or other processes, even I think even Trade Warrior we've hooked up with, that you can use that number to export those files right into those other platforms that we're associated with. And that's one of the things I have been talking with Rob Major about, having him come on, and we're going to demonstrate how all this stuff works together with Asset Book, which is like Advent, or I guess Allbridge or one of those, or so yeah. So anyway, we can go from there, or Morningstar Office or whatever. It's just a reporting tool for performance reporting and all those types of things. And they, like us, are very customizable, and they're a smaller shop that are able to work with you directly to build customized presentations and stuff like that, where Allbridge, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. That's it.
That's right.
It's pretty wonky stuff.
Yeah, you may throw a fit, but
yeah, you can throw a fit. You can call them, but it's not going to do you any good. And it's the same thing with most of the other platforms. Advent has some flexibility, but they charge you like $30,000 a minute to consult you to show you how to do it. They're really, really expensive. They figured out the software consulting model pretty good, and they've been running that model for a long time. So if those of you that use it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, but anyway, those are things I just wanted to point out. I just happened to see that unique identifier. So if you get there and you look at that, what the heck is that for? That's really for a sharing possibility with other users, as well as integrating with other types pieces of software that we have available.
Yep, and that's also something, if you happen to want to share with internally, you can pass this unique unique ID to another advisor that's using Portfolio Expert. So yeah, it's just if we ever ask for it, this is where you're going to find it, and it's also referred to as a UUID, as you'll see right here, Portfolio UUID. It's easy to say. So now we'll click next. As always, we're setting the portfolio to the beginning of the year, 5 years earlier. We could go ahead and stick with that date, or we could go ahead and adjust it to some other time that you want to use. So we'll just go ahead and push next. Starting equity in this case, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at 100,000. We could change it or from the drop down or by manually typing it out here. By clicking next, we can select a minimum transaction, and as before, you could also either select it from a drop down or type it out. And typically we recommend that the minimum transaction is 1% of the starting equity. And all this does, this helps to determine how aggressively we get into a security. It doesn't change the timing or the when of when it is that we buy or sell security. All it does is it adjusts the shares that we purchase at any given point. So now we'll go ahead and click next. And as I said before, we're going to be working with these ETFs. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and set it from moderate activity to high activity, low liquidity. So this is, again, not changing the timing of the securities, but how aggressively we get into each of the securities. In the case of mutual funds and ETFs, we're always going to use that high activity, low liquidity setting. Go ahead and push next. If this was a non-wrap account, I could put in the transaction fee that I would pass on to clients. So if it was $19.95, you could go ahead and type this in here. But because I'm a good VPM user and I'm absorbing all these ticket charges within a wrap account, I'm going to go ahead and keep it as 0. Here you can also set in the management fee. We'll go ahead and just put in a basic 1.5% management fee. You can change that so it's either a monthly or quarterly basis. In Portfolio Expert, we default to quarterly. And then when we get to the next step, we can actually load up the securities. Now, one of the things that's different within Portfolio Expert from 2.0 is this right here when it comes to selecting the trade system. Just as within 2.0, you can select whether it's optimized weekly or optimized daily or a combination of the two, or you can manually set the daily or weekly trade systems. But we also have is the ability to make a buy and hold portfolio. So if you wanted to, you could bring in a position and enter it up here. So if we wanted to have a constant buy and hold setting in an SPY, when I add that into the portfolio, you see the trade system is marked as buy and hold. It's on effective the beginning of the portfolio. So what this means is as of this date, we are going to buy into this position, and we're going to hold at least some constant position in the security for the life of the portfolio. But in this case, what I want to do is actually use the classic optimized weekly to set the securities. So in this case, I'll go ahead and load up the familiar names. So SPY, IJR, MDY, EFA, and since I'm copying the Global Equity Strategy 4, I'm going to leave EEM on the optimized daily. And so now you see right here, EEM is set to 3.2 daily, and then we have some that are on the 1.2 system, like IJR and SPY, whereas the other two on the 3.2 weekly. And in this case, I've left the date to be the portfolio's inception, but this box over here is where I go ahead and load up the starts or stops. So just like in 2.0, you have the ability to turn positions on or off within a portfolio. You just do that in a different spot. You do this under the symbol manual control over to the right-hand side of it. So if I go ahead and push the plus sign, it'll prompt me for a date, and I could either put in today's date and turn it off, and then if I want, I could also load it up for some other date to turn it back on. And so that you can see the switch getting flipped on and off as time goes on. The only difference is in this system, we refer to it as on and off as opposed to start and stop. And what it'll also do, if I go ahead and remove this off position, you see I have these loaded up on. I believe next time I come into the portfolio, it's going to go ahead and recognize that I have 2 on positions in a row, and it's going to go ahead and remove the duplicates. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it on so that all these are on since the portfolio's inception. Lastly, I'm going to go ahead and click Next. It's going to take me to that initial allocation factor. And as we said before, this is the step where VPM decides how much we're buying into each of these securities at the time that we enter it. So in this case, the initial allocation factor is 28.7629%. So essentially we're buying 28.75% into each of these positions if we have full capital at the entry point of a portfolio. And then we click Finish. And this will queue it up to the system. And as you see right here, we now have this purple bar on the screen, which shows that it's been loaded up to the portfolio list, and we were just waiting for it to run. Once it's run, that purple bar disappears, and now we're on global sample. So now we have the latest stats on this portfolio. And just as the others, I click on it, I can see how this has changed over time on the equity curve. I have all the other views loaded up. And as Bob mentioned, we can actually set this as a buy and hold portfolio as well, simply by right-clicking. And before I went right to the clone portfolio, the option right beneath it is clone portfolio as buy and hold. So for better or for worse, I can create a carbon copy of this portfolio. And if I click finish, it's going to go ahead and load it up. Now the thing to keep in mind when it creates this buy and hold portfolio, what it really is doing is it's essentially dumping the 100% pie chart into an equal weighting into each of these positions, because it's going to go long each of these positions the moment that we turned it on, and it's going to divide capital the best way it can around that allocation factor. But you're pretty much guaranteed it's going to be a simple 1 divided by n, or in this case 5 divided by 100. So each of these have about a 20% stake in the open positions here. And then that will fluctuate depending on when the security came on. So as you see with this portfolio, I have the original one right above it. I now have a buy and hold. And now we can compare these two strategies and see how they've performed in different time periods. So you see the buy and hold is pretty much kept right in line with the S&P 500, the Dow Jones in this case. I could actually toggle that to be the S&P. And so I could select multiple benchmarks, or I could just stick to one of them. So on a buy and hold basis, this has been slightly underperforming the S&P 500 over this time frame. And then I could jump around to different time frames, whether it's a 10-year or a 5-year, and you see that it'll change depending on the spans of times that we're looking at, depending on what the market's doing over those different time periods. So what this allows you to do is once you come over to the Portfolio Expert system, what we recommend is, if you're making that full-fledged jump from 2.0 to Portfolio Expert, you really want to bring in all the portfolios from 2.0 into the system. So while you can simply subscribe to them or copy them over, which they will happen by default, like we saw with this Global Equity Strategy 4 Schwab portfolio, what we want to do is to be able to bring them over so that we actually can edit the portfolio and be able to turn positions on and off. So what we've told advisors numerous times is, once you come over to Portfolio Expert, you really want to embrace the system, even if there's a little bit of a learning curve or a little bit of new dynamics that you have to figure out as you make use of the system. You really want to embrace it, so that way all your changes are going into either the 2.0 system or the Portfolio Expert system. And really, because you have a little bit more control in the Portfolio Expert system, and you're paying for it at that point, you really want to make sure that you stick to the system, and this is your new religion, so to speak, your new denomination of faith when it comes to the market, as opposed to jumping back and forth to the 2.0 and Portfolio Expert. And we've seen that sometimes, and it's better just to embrace one of the systems wholeheartedly instead of jumping back and forth. Do you have any comments before we move on from this, Bob?
No.
I know we only have a couple more minutes, but
yeah. No, I think the flexibility is pretty obvious. Like we've talked about before, they're basically the same system with more flexibility. The ability to build the VDOS is where the big the big availability is for making your own decisions in there. But other than that, it's the 2.0 system on an upgraded system, platform that allows all this flexibility and views. So, some of the things I think from a presentation standpoint with a client, I think there's a lot of real positives when you're sitting there, depending on how you're presenting yourself. That's considering you're not a napkin guy.
Yeah.
If you're a napkin guy, that's okay. If you just scribble on a piece of paper and you're okay with that and it works for you, what works. But if you're looking for a little more presentation, we've been into several advisors' offices. They got giant screens in their office and things of that sort, and they're putting on, literally putting on, a big presentation especially for, from my viewpoint, most of our clients are created equal. Everybody has the same I guess they have the same value in our business as I'm sure they do in yours as far as their client. But it's just a matter of how you present to different groups of clients is different. So if we meet an advisor that's got $500 million in it, we might present differently to someone who's got 30 million and what they might need for their practice, or at least from the 30 million, we're trying to help them to scale the business and get it to grow. With a $500 million guy, we were probably helping to really scale the business and put some other processes in that are making the whole business easier to run, as well as authenticating the process and of participate, protect, and grow, the PPG standards. So,
right. One of the other things that I think is important to touch upon is, as we said before, this is actually an application that installs onto your computer, and it does work if you're using a Linux or Mac or PC-based, Windows-based computer. If you want to be able to use this on something like an iPad or even your iPhone, you can have access to it, but you won't be using the Portfolio Expert system to do it. You're actually going to be using our VDOS portfolio that's off the Connect site to be able to access it.
Right. And if you're like me and have a Surface Pro, then you can do whatever you want. You can install it, it will work. And the only problem you have is Windows 8, which is a pain in the butt. But you can put a thing called StarDock on and get about 90% of all your old Windows 7 functionality, and it makes the darn thing actually usable. And it's $5. I think it's called StarDock. It might be stardock.com, but Google StarDock. And if you hate Windows 8 like I do, then put StarDock on. It'll certainly help the functionality. And you can flip back and forth between Windows 8 views and Windows 7, where you have the Explorer, all the things that you know and love, I guess.
Yeah, I believe the actual software is called Stardate by StarDock. It's as easy as going to stardock.com.
Yeah.
I have yet to see Windows 8 firsthand, as far as on one of my PCs.
It's terrible.
I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, it's terrible. Stick with Windows Pro if you can, Windows 7 Pro. But anyway, yeah, from the functionality and stuff, we got about 3 minutes to go, 2.5. From functionality, there's just a lot you can do with this. One of the things we didn't even touch on, import, export capabilities, those type of things are huge in itself. And especially if you're a Power spreadsheet guy, there's a lot of stuff you can do. It
Right.
really there's a lot on that side, and that's probably one of the advanced functionalities that are out there, and being able to do that. And Mitch has built several interfaces to help with that, the PDC tool and some other things that really help you to almost bring a blotter of an account and import it in and do a few things, and you've got your numbers there. It's not almost that easy, right, Mitch?
There's a few steps required. Yeah, I mean,
but it's close to.
Yeah, what we've tried to do is make it as easy as possible to be able to convert either existing strategies or trade logs into the system, so you could see how it's done over time, and maybe compare that or validate it against some other strategies.
And then it's easy to do the min maxes and do other elements at that time, so you can really start to see where VPM can add some value and alpha to what you're doing. And always the biggest thing I think we have is the scalability. So I guess, Mitch, in closing, you can, since you've been running this show for the most part, have some closing thoughts.
Yeah, my closing thoughts on this is, we spent quite a bit of time just working with the very bare bones basics of Portfolio Experts, and really just in terms of portfolios. For the next couple episodes, what we're going to do is we're going to start focusing on the research side of things, talking about how this is really incredibly robust when it comes to things like queries or watch lists or symbols. And that, I think, is exceptionally valuable for advisors that are running stock portfolios or multiple stock strategies, to really be able to dig into our database to get the most out of the system. There's really a phenomenal amount of information that you can access by using this tool.
All right, well, that was perfect because we just turned over on the hour. So as usual, folks, thanks for listening. If you're streaming it, thanks for listening in your spare time, and we will see you tomorrow at Market Thunder at 12 noon Eastern Time. Thanks again.